I could do it if she's busy.
I'm sorry. I have to send something to Rob.
Well, okay.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Yep. I'll do the roll. David Boroway, I'm present. Jim Jinks.
Here.
You're here. And Tim Slocum?
I am here.
Good. Okay. We have a quorum of 100% attendance. That's great. We'll dispense with the pledge because we're going to be doing it in a few minutes with the full council and move right on to gifts, which is numbers 3 through 11 are on the consent calendar. So they're very generous and very nice. And then also the historic preservation document we get every year. So those are good. Do we have any questions on them, or do we want to move to recommend them to the council?
I would recommend it. They do also include that 5342 grant for the substance abuse stuff, which is an ongoing thing. I think this is our third year on that.
Good. Thanks for the history. That's good. Okay. Is there a second?
Just real quick, what is the Historic Documents Preservation Grant? Who does that come from?
That comes from the state. That's another one that we do get every year. Goes through the town clerk's office. I don't know, Jim, do you want to give a quick summary on that?
Yeah, all I can tell you is I think that is a portion of your conveyance tax fees that circles back to the town that can be used for preservation of our land records and so forth.
Oh, I see. Okay, great.
We get to go back a few years, I think, go back from 90 to 87 or something, I think it was, and continue going back. We've done the oldest ones years ago, and so now it's kind of filling in the gap.
Correct. That's right.
So, good. All right.
So I'll second the motion then, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Sensing you're ready to vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passed unanimous. Item 12 was separated out because it is so involved in the whole community and quite a large, generous donation of $14,500 from the Lights of Hope. Do we have a recommendation for or a motion to recommend this to the council?
So
I move it. Okay, I'll second that.
Second by Tim. All right. And as a courtesy, I'm going to ask Don if he wants to make this motion later in the meeting, even though it's coming out of here. Hopefully nobody will have any objections to that, since it's his group that worked with that. If he feels it's a conflict, then he won't. But anyway, so this is very generous of them. And this really is money from this year or from last year that they
it's raised this year, throughout the year.
Could be from last month, I think.
Yeah,
okay.
It would be their fundraising.
That's very quick.
Yeah, well, they raise, I think they fundraise all year, have some general idea what's coming in, I believe.
Okay, good. All right, well, are there any other questions or comments? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimous. And the last item, I see John is here for that. The last item is parks and field use fee changes, discussion of this, not planning on taking action yet, but I did read the memo. I guess if it's all right, do you want to start with a presentation or do you want to go into questions?
Sure. I mean, yeah, let me go through my sheet that I had submitted for council action. So one of the few things that I noticed when I first took the position was the fees for the facilities were really, really inexpensive, in particular for commercial and non-resident organizations. So I'm looking to modify that. We were in a COVID summer, so we had, limited access or limited time to rent fields. But as the background that I submitted with the council action sheet, we brought in $8,200. We would have realized $24,000 plus, with a differential of about $16,000 to the good. So my question is, why wouldn't we want to go after that? I'm just trying to find ways to be creative and increase in some revenue. So basically, the renters that we've had that are, examples of commercial, some of them are non-resident, some of them are Cheshire-based businesses, are listed on that sheet, such as Diamond Zone from North Haven, USA Elite is from Cheshire, Ultimate Sports is from Wallingford, DBAT is from Cheshire, Team 203 Lacrosse, Team Connecticut Lacrosse, Cheshire, Northeastern Lacrosse, New Haven, Quinnipiac University. Prior to COVID, their club sports, I found out, cannot access their varsity facilities. So they had gone to Cheshire, Hamden. Those places either didn't have room for reservation or did not want to get into an agreement. So we had space and, was renting it out for $25 an hour. We would have realized a whole lot more in 2019 because we did have a full, pretty much a full calendar of rentals. I'm not looking to increase any Cheshire youth organization, anything like that. I know that when I submitted this to Sean for his review when he was doing the council agenda prep, Tim, you had a suggestion which I thought was great, and it cleaned it up very quickly. And our regular form that we have, that I think you have in your packet, it's part of our registration field gym use form. We just created, thank you, the priority group 4. It's very specific. It's for profit and non-resident groups. And basically, I'm looking to move the needle up by $50 an hour to $75. When I was in Wallingford, probably about going back now 12 years, I had moved. We had forced people, or we had forced, the reservation was for 3 hours at $200 for the 3 hours, which it breaks out to about $67 an hour 12 years ago. So I'm kind of splitting the difference. Wanted to go to 75. And then I also provided another chart of just what some of our surrounding towns currently on how they're handling the non-resident commercial use. And you can see that that's in the gray box. We're listed first at $25 an hour. Wallingford still is at $67 an hour, but you have to make a reservation for 3 hours. Whether you use it for 1 hour or you use it for 2 hours and 59 minutes, it's still $200. Southington's $50 an hour. Meriden is $75 an hour. DPW handles, because they have their own parks crew like Cheshire. The parks crew is part of Public Works. They have a component within that office that handles the reservations and the fees. I'm not so sure our parks and our Public Works department wants to handle that. Cromwell is $50, Farmington's $55, Glastonbury $60, and $120 an hour for night rental. So that was the small collection of towns that I went to go after to take a look at it. The other piece to this is when we went back to, if you go back to the budget, I kind of broached the topic a little bit that our Public Works department, we don't recoup any of those fees. So if a commercial group or non-resident group, wants to have field prep or they need a Public Works maintainer on hand, Public Works is supplying that basically free of charge. There's no mechanism to recoup that. And I just think that good business practice, we should make an attempt to do that. I've been working with Sean and Jim Jascott on creating an enterprise fund or a special fund, if you will, to handle facility rentals. And we can get into that another time. But I just think that, two things, the recovery of our Public Works staff time. And I think that the market bears and allows for us to increase our fees to commercial or non-resident entities. In Wallingford, when I was there, we raised the fees. At the time, it would seem to be very high because we were getting an influx of non-resident, all kinds of non-resident commercial travel teams. And our commission at the time, they set the fees, not the council. They said, let's raise the fees. Let's, if we have this space, we'll rent it if we want to. And if people thought that the fees were too high, well, then our fields stay preserved for our residents. So I think that basically is it, and I'll entertain some questions.
I actually had a question, and you started to address it at some level. Um, your last state saying if the field's not used, well, that's better for the field. So in the end, John, if we go to what seems to be a now higher than market rate, maybe it's not, maybe it isn't. But the bottom line is, I presume we could see some loss in revenue to you, but maybe not. I don't know the answer to that. But if we do lose some of that field use, it's good for the fields. Is that correct?
Sure. Fields aren't going to get as compacted, and they're not going to get as beat up.
Okay.
What do
But
you
I'm
feel like?
sure but I feel that the fee is, $75 an hour still is quite reasonable. People will still come, and then you'll see a spike in revenue.
Mm-hmm. Well, we saw it with the police cars.
Jim, you had a comment or question?
I mean, John I was just going to ask if he felt like some of these vendors or some of these users we have now, commercial users, are coming here because they know that Cheshire is, an inexpensive place to rent a field. But if you're feeling like we're probably not going to lose them, that's good. Is this primarily use of Bartlam Park fields, or are there other fields they're using too?
No, they're using Cheshire Park, Bartlam, McNamara.
Okay, so all the baseball
Sure.
fields, softball fields, that kind of thing. Okay.
And there would be a couple of them at Quinnipiac Soccer too, in between their schedule and their use.
Right.
Because it's an attractive place because you have 5 multi-use fields in that one area.
Right.
And I think
right.
we have seen some, I know it's been an interesting, obviously, COVID season. And so it's hard to compare this summer and the request we had to all others. There were certainly some motivating factors where teams from out of state maybe couldn't use their home facilities. But we did hear, and we had some requests, some that we ended up turning down, including from professional sports teams like a professional rugby team that wanted to do a clinic. They wanted to expand from the Boston area down into Connecticut and grow the game. And I think Cheshire is very attractive to them because it's such a centrally located town. They think they can kind of draw people from around. And as John and I looked at their requests, and of course, unfortunately, it was right when COVID was sort of restricting more of those kind of games, especially a high-risk sport like rugby. But in normal times, there was an example where we looked at their ability to pay and our fee of only $25 an hour and thought, man, we really could be making a little more off of this. And they really wanted to come to Cheshire. So just an example.
Do you have any thoughts, John, assuming we do this, of what you might do with that kind of additional revenue? Do you already have some ideas for that or no?
So the other part of earlier this fall, Jim and Sean and I met to talk about, on the program side, a special fund, an enterprise fund, changing a bit of how we handle our programs now. In addition to that, pull in the facilities, and the facility rentals all can go back, during that fiscal year, to provide extra money either for public works and line items that they don't have, and provide other park improvements or facility improvements. And at the end of the fiscal year, if this is the way we wanted to set that fund up, that any balance that's unused would just go back to the general fund, and then we'd start over again in the fiscal year. I mean, there's some carryovers. There's different formats of how to do a special fund. We haven't nailed down specifically the one that we want to do yet, but hopefully that kind of answers your question, so that we can put the money that's collected back into the facilities, whether it's signage, whether it's clay, whether it's grass seed, some fencing, things like that.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. I also had a thought of doing, if a piece of it could be given to like our travel basketball league, perhaps, to kind of cover some of their costs that they have in terms of the maintaining someone to be there to open the doors for them, or have a janitor or something like that. But it could be along those lines too, I presume, or is that sort of a separate thing?
I think paying for an operational expense versus a maintenance or a facility improvement, I'd have to defer either to Jim or to Sean and maybe how the rules would be crafted for that. I know my experience in Wallingford, anything that was taken in for facility rentals had to go specifically towards facilities. But on the program side, if there was any abundance of money in program side, then that perhaps could answer or address your issue with, or your situation with the travel basketball, providing some respite there.
Yeah, if I could just piggyback on that a little bit. I mean, this is sort of a preview of a discussion we were looking forward to discussing in the budget. This is something we've been, John introduced during our budget, his budget presentation last year, just this idea of an enterprise fund, a little more of running the department as a business sort of model and trying to keep some of those funds that currently are going to general fund as revenue, but kind of circulate them back right into the facilities themselves. So like you mentioned, Jim and John and I have met about this a couple of times, and I think you as the budget committee will certainly be hearing more about that piece of this if as a proposal in the upcoming budget discussions.
Okay. Yeah, and the other thing I had to say, the idea of charging some of these users for public works for some of the services they provide to get the fields ready is a no-brainer. I would definitely support that. Sure.
Excellent.
I have a question, and the issue that I want to bring up, I may be the kind of thing wrong, right church, wrong pew thing. But a few months ago, we had somebody come and say that our fees were high. And Chairman Orris talked about trying to do some balancing. I suspect it was not fields. I suspect it was indoor usage. But Sean, do you remember the lady that came?
Yeah. So
yeah, that had to do with the
what
travel
the
basketball team. Yeah.
Travel basketball. Yeah. And that one dates back a couple of years now. It's a little bit different and a little more because those are Board of Ed facilities. The issues there really arose around separate fee structure that the Board of Ed runs for their facilities, except we have preferential or no cost use of those facilities for the town's park and rec function. And then due to agreements that were put in place or arrangements before really John or I were here, certain groups like travel basketball were allowed to use that park and rec or book the facilities through park and rec, if you will. And then we needed a way to recapture those funds. And because we needed, in that case, you're paying for a staff member to open, as Jim Jinx just mentioned, monitor the building, be there, be present during the actual games and practices. So I think, John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a little bit different than these field use rentals. I don't think that would apply specifically. But go ahead, John, on that.
Yeah, no, that's correct. I'm sitting here thinking about it, and thinking and hearing how that's kind of evolved prior to me getting here. What if the town took over the travel basketball program, or we directly sponsored it? I mean, we already sponsor rec basketball. Why not make that a component of and sort of? I mean, we could talk about this later, but it would just seem to me where we hire. Well,
I take that up with the commission. See what they think, and you work it out with them. That would be my suggestion before it ever gets to us. That would be my suggestion on that one.
I'm just wondering if there's a component, because I know that at some point, I know Krista Hayes, I don't know how long she's going to stay on. I mean, I think her kids are getting a little older. I don't know if it's one of these that she's going to stay on, or maybe if there's another Cheshire parent that takes that on. It's a Cheshire-based travel program, and maybe there's a connection there with the regular rec basketball league, and that we could kind of go around the bend a little bit and maybe take on some of this. I don't know. We could talk about it. But I think going back to the original question, Dave, it was, it's different than the facilities.
Okay, I just don't want to exacerbate a problem that maybe isn't resolved yet by doing this. But at the same time, if we're leaving money on the table for field use, especially out of town people, and we were underpricing it. You know, as long as we're not too much overpricing it, where it's unreasonable, because they are public facilities, and some of which may have gotten state grants. I know we got a state organization that did a lot of the work at Bartlam, the landscaping and stuff. You know, I'd hate to have issues that can complicate as well. So,
Okay.
all right. Well, I
You
think
feel-
this will be
you-
further discussion with the full
You
council.
feel like it, sorry, one more quick question. Do you think,
Yeah.
John, it might be better to maybe just step the increase over 2 years or something?
We could do that. I'm not opposed
mean,
to
you-
that.
I mean,
I'm
you
just-
know,
I
you know
just
better.
know
You know
from my
better.
experience
Yeah.
that groups are going to come and groups need facilities.
Right.
And even at $75, I mean, I'm okay with going to 50 or 65. I have that chart there of about 6 or 7 communities. I just think there's a really good opportunity to create some field revenue and use that revenue either to go back to the general fund or to bolster park and rec revenue, or even to do, as we talked about before, to make improvements as needed during that fiscal year, and then the rest goes back to the general fund.
Yeah, no, it makes
I
complete,
wouldn't-
it makes total sense to me, and I'm certainly not against the idea of having out of towners pay more. I just don't want us to scare away good customers in the process, right?
I'd rather
Yeah, no,
do it all at once, and then if we got to claw back a price, maybe do it then. But I can't see phasing this. People have to plan their own fees for their organizations and stuff like that. So it's better that it be known. I think,
also
rather
want to.
than-
Sorry, sorry, Tim. I also wouldn't want to be yelled at or looked on badly for raising prices 2 times. You know, 2 years in a row. Let's get it over once to a level that's reasonable. But what does Park and Rec think of this?
The commission,
The commission.
they're good with it.
Yeah, they were
discussed
supportive.
it many months, and our last meeting we took a vote and they voted unanimous.
Okay. Those
Yeah.
are our volunteers and our eyes and ears there as citizens.
Yeah.
So
And John did state that at the first go around with this, right? I was aware that the commission supported it.
okay, I did not see it in here, so I guess I missed it. All right, thank you. Well, I think we can move this up certainly without recommendation, but move this on for further discussion to the full council. Are there other comments or questions on this issue?
Well, there is going to be a motion on this. There's a motion in our packets. So if we don't have to
Oh.
approve it, I guess, but there is a motion if I'm not mistaken.
Tim,
There
can
is,
if
but-
I don't mind, is it appropriate if I weigh in this?
Sure, absolutely.
Fine.
Mr. Chair.
There is a resolution only to the extent we want to advance a resolution. We have time on this, and I don't believe we've gotten enough opportunity to kind of digest it. So I wasn't assuming we were looking to pass this tonight, that we would
Okay.
think more about it and at best put it on next agenda.
I'm in
That's fine by me. That's fine by me.
Yeah.
I just saw it as an action item. So
But in the agenda, it just says discussion, but I know Arnett did put a resolution in if we, chose to do so. I personally don't think it's ready. I think we need a little more opportunity to digest it. And I mean, between now and January, there's no real outside field
Right.
use that we need to be
Right.
worried about, right?
right.
Right.
We've got COVID going on, so I think I'd rather take a little more time to make sure we get this right.
Yeah.
Mr.
Okey-doke.
Chairman,
I'm in agreement with that.
if I could just add,
Sure, John.
whatever you decide to do is fine with me. I would just like to have direction by the end of January, because then I'll start doing my field meetings. Last year I started a series of public meetings to make sure that we have an equitable field distribution process. The commission was present. Public Works was present. I held 2 different meetings, one for multi-use fields and then another meeting night for just the big diamond baseball, small diamond Little League softball. They were well received, but at that point is when I'm entertaining requests for field use for spring and summer. And so if there is going to be any fluctuation or any change in the fees, I'd like to have something by the beginning of
Right.
February, at the very least. That would be helpful.
All right. Duly noted.
Thanks.
All right, so Budget Committee, I guess then we will just move this on as for a discussion item with the for
Right.
the council, with us not having objections to it, but not making a formal recommendation. I would rather hear what the whole council has to say in discussion and have it come back next month for us and for the council to possibly take action.
Sure.
All right, well then that's the end of our agenda. I'm ready for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
By Mr. Jenks. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, passes
Aye.
unanimously. Thank you, Mayor Orris. You are all set. We are concluded with our business here.
Yeah, thanks. Well, we'll give it a couple minutes. Ms. Talbot?
Mr. Borrowy,
Present.
Mr. Jinks,
Here.
Ms. Nichols,
Here.
Chairman Orris,
Here.
Ms. Pavano,
Here.
Mr. Slocum,
Here.
Mr. Talbot,
Here.
Mr. Veliver,
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Talbot. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
Jesus,
the
flag,
the United
United
States
States
of
of
America
America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
And
and
justice.
justice
for all.
for all. Good. First item on the agenda is executive session. As I think you all know, we're going to push that to 8 o'clock. We have some of our professionals that will only be available at 8 o'clock, so we'll cut into executive session as we go forward. And I think it works out well so that we can get into public communications. I know we have some presentations. I know Maura Esposito is here to give us another COVID update. Maura, thank you for being here. I know you've been working around the clock with your staff, and thank you for everything you guys are doing. And we also have an update from Chairwoman Bates from the SMC Committee, School Modernization. Thank you, Jen, for being here. Also to give us an update, two very important issues that our community is certainly very interested in. So with that, I'm going to go to number 4, public communications, and start with the COVID-19 update from our Chesapeake Health Director, Maura Esposito. Welcome, Maura.
Oh, thank you for having me tonight. It really does give me a great opportunity to be in front of you and to all the residents of the community to give my information, present our information, and present our recommendations. So it's a very fast time right now in my office. I'm not going to lie. We are still tracking all of the cases. In November, we had 192 total cases, with the most highest age range in the 50s and the 20-year-olds, as we reported a couple weeks ago. For the first week of November, which is just over 7-8 days, we've had 131 cases in Cheshire. The cases that are most highest in age range from 30 to 59. One thing that I am watching very closely is that we are seeing more school-age children reporting positive. In this time frame of December, from 0 to 5, the little guys, we've had 5 cases. From 6 to 12, we've had 13 cases. And the 13 to 19, we have 14 cases. Now, this doesn't reflect all of those individuals impacting or are in Cheshire Public Schools, because we do have many kids in our communities that go to outside private schools. So I just want you to know that of all these, we have been still contact tracing. It's gotten a little more challenging because the data that gets presented to us on the state website has not been providing phone numbers. So we are not only being contact tracers, but we are trying to figure out people's phone numbers at the same time. But basically, the sums of all of these cases, I would say about 90% of this is all from in the families. Once again, we're seeing once it gets in the family, it has a way of going wildfire. Many of these cases were from family gatherings and Thanksgivings. We had many instances where we had outside visitors from different states that were coming up and visiting for the holidays, and someone in there was positive and passed it. We are seeing an uptick in medical personnel again. I'm not going to lie, we are very worried about nursing staff shortages right at this point, not only in the hospitals and nursing homes, but overall, even our own long-term care facilities are struggling with nurses getting positive. So as much as we're going to be continuing watching all these cases and kind of guiding them, we really have to take a real switch, and it's turning a very hard 90 degrees this week, getting ready with the vaccinations, as I'm sure all of you have been hearing. Pfizer and Moderna both have their vaccines, and today was on the news how it was in England. Well, December 14th is the arrival date in Connecticut. There is different phases to these vaccinations. Phase 1A is going to be your healthcare personnel that are getting vaccinated. These are your hospitals, these are your health departments, these are your vaccinators. Also included in 1A are residents of long-term care facilities, so your Elam Park and your Cheshire Rehab. Also medical first responders, those are your EMS. There's some debate going on, and I'm sure it will figure itself out because not every town has a dedicated EMS. Sometimes it's the fire department or police. So those are all they're still trying to figure out the loose ends. The second phase is the critical workforce. That's our fire, PD, government, and schools. Adults over 65, high-risk individuals under 65, and other congregate settings. Now, what I would say congregate settings is your assisted living, your older establishments, independent living establishments. They're predicting that after probably around June is when the general public will be probably getting this. Now, we've been planning all along. We've had some really great, we've developed drive-through model because that was originally what they wanted us to look at because this virus can transmit so easily. But as you all know, it was pretty brisk out there this morning, and I don't know if my nurses would really want to be outside in the freezing cold. So they kind of switched the model on us last week, a week and a half ago, and asked us to look for facilities that were large, open, really great ventilation systems, things that you would be able to space out. And so you would lower the risk of those people not only vaccinating, but the people coming through to get the vaccine. So I did work very closely with Sean and Jack Kasner, the emergency medical director. And Sean, can I say this or? We're looking at the town pool as a wonderful opportunity for us to vaccinate in there with the great ventilation system that it has, the great parking, the great opening. It just is a win-win. And with any, I'm sure I'm talking to the wrong group when I say that with the state of Connecticut, you never know what's going to come your way. Today, they had us on learning the CDC. It's called Vaccine Administration Management System. It's the CDC software where we're going to be keeping track of everybody and their vaccination. And it's pretty complicated. So we are getting ready to start getting uploads of our first round, which is the health department people and our vaccinators, to be uploading our information in there so the hospitals will vaccinate us ahead of time because we've got to keep this vaccine. Of course, we're probably going to get the Pfizer because that's what's mostly going to the hospitals, has a 2-shot 21 days apart. So we're going to have to use this VAM system, enter our information, and get all our vaccinations done. I did send out an email tonight to all the schools, and I included in there another facility, Elam Park, only because they have a group of nurses who have been working very close with us, being the fact that I have to prepare that there may be a shortage on nurses. Even, I need to have that crew of nurses available. The way that this is kind of being portrayed to us is that we are going to get very little amounts of vaccine over a long period of time. So for instance, if I have 3,000 people I have to vaccinate, if I only get 100 vaccines each week, and I've got, it could take 30 weeks times 2, because I've got to give them 2 shots. So that's what we're preparing for the worst. I'm hopeful it isn't that way, but I have to remember that this is a situation, a pandemic throughout the whole United States and the world. So I don't know what to expect. But the VAM system is pretty complicated. But what ends up happening is that I will be reaching out to like Sean and Jack and Neil and everyone that's in charge of a critical workforce. And they will be uploading all of their people who are getting vaccinated into the system. The system then sends them an email and tells them how to sign up, do all the forms electronically. Like when you go into the flu shot, you sign your name away. You're going to be doing all these forms online. And then you show up at the place to be vaccinated, the pool. You'll pull into a spot. You'll make a phone call in just like we're ordering pizza, and you will get someone from probably one of my volunteers, because my MRC volunteers are stepping up. And I want to say thank you for all those people who saw my post to help out, because we were being inundated by people who want to help out. You'll get a number, we'll take your information, and we'll call you in and get your vaccine in and out. So we're ready to do this. It's a little nerve-wracking, but we're ready to take on the task. From what we've heard, we've been going back and forth with the state as far as what our role is going to be. And it really sounds like we're going to have a lot to be doing for the next couple of months at least.
Maura, thank you for that. I'll open it up to questions or comments from members of the council. Mr. Talbot?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, one for Maura and one for Sean. Um, Maura, you talked about the vaccines. First of all, thank you and thank your staff for all that you're doing. With regard to the vaccines, are all of the companies' vaccines 2 shots, 21 days apart?
Yes, that I know of right now. You know,
What is the effectiveness of the vaccine after the first shot?
Good question.
you know, that's a really great question. I only know after the second shot.
Yeah, the second shot, they say it's, 94, 94
Yeah, they're
and a half.
talking between, they're saying that the Pfizer is about 90%. They're saying the Moderna is about 95. They're basically saying too, after the second shot, there was an increased rate of a slight fever. But when I look at when you're looking at the numbers of who got the placebo and who didn't, and then caught the virus, 90% is great at this point. At this point.
I guess I'm concerned a little bit that someone's going to get the first shot and think, oh, well, I'm 94%, and I don't want to have unreasonable expectations out there if people still have to be very diligent until after their second booster.
Yeah, I can tell you this, that in the state of Connecticut, it's called ESF 15. It's the communication link. I'm public health, their communication. They are doing a huge campaign all about educating the public about all of this.
Okay.
That is one thing also that I have to track, and this VAM system tracks tracks it because you have to get the 2 shots. So it sends out reminder after reminder that you need to go back to a clinic to get your second shot. And it's very important that if you got a Pfizer 1, you got to get the Pfizer 2. You can't go switching. So it's going to be interesting.
Thank you. And Sean, do you know if there's CARES Act money from the state to reimburse for vaccination costs? In other words, if we had to rent the pool, for example, to...
Sure. Yeah, there are some, we believe there will be some potential reimbursement there. I know for certain, say, testing events, the FEMA has come out and said that CARES Act money, and again, Jim Jascott's on the call here, the state CARES Act funds are a little more permissive than some of the regulations that FEMA has for the reimbursement through FEMA. But for instance, we know that any traffic control, say police overtime that might be needed should you have a larger event, we did get confirmation that would be reimbursable. We don't anticipate, again, a lot of this is going to depend, as Maura, Jack, and Neil and I have talked about extensively, on how much we get, right? It's a very different event if you're vaccinating 20 people than if you're doing 200 people. So a lot of it, we're going to have to just kind of wait and see. And as we've done throughout this, pivot based on what we have. But I don't know, Jim Jascott, if you have anything you want to add.
The only thing I could say, I think there's a good chance it will qualify for something where you're directly dealing with COVID, potential COVID positive people.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none. I actually do have a couple quick questions. I've heard a little bit about some of the drugstores like CVS or Rite Aid that they may be rolling out these vaccinations as well. Do you have anything to add to that?
From what I am hearing is yes, they were really, you will be involving the Walmarts, the CVS, the Rite Aids, but they are having just as much problem because you have to remember that they are not in the business of doing mass vaccinations. The health departments have years of experience doing all of this. We are very regulated as far as our refrigerators having backups. I have been very blessed. Elam Park actually has a refrigerator backup for me at their facility. So if I need extra storage capacity, that it is there. Will they have people and have it through? Yes. You know, we have been told the governor wants to flood the market with availability of these vaccines once we finish with phase 1A and getting all the necessary people done. The goal is to be able to get herd immunity you need to get majority of the population vaccinated to help those
Thank you,
people.
Maura. And so for phase 1A, though, it'll all be done through the communities. And for Cheshire, it would be done through, well, we'll probably be doing it at the pool, it sounds like, through your office, correct?
Yes.
And the hospitals.
Okay, there'll be no.
And the hospitals.
Hospitals too.
Yeah, so that was
Phase
my
1 will
second
be
question. That was really my second question. I know the hospitals are getting their shipments. My wife is a nurse and she was alerted that they're getting their shipments pretty quick as well.
Yeah.
Are those just for their employees or are they also going to be distributing some there as well?
That is only for them to give to their medical personnel. I'm in the meeting. Excuse me, can you all just step out for 1 minute? Thank you. Sorry. I was
Maura, no problem. Listen, we're all dealing with Zoom
Improv.
stuff, so no problem, Maura. We're just so happy you're here. We know you're going around the clock. No worries. None
Can't even
whatsoever.
hide from anywhere. The hospitals are going to be giving it to their personnel. They are going to be giving shots to my department and to my vaccinators. Okay, and their EMS. That's all they're giving it to. Okay, so then I can take those vaccines, then go set up mine and where I'm going to get more people in. So they're the start.
Thank you. And the last question I have is those that have had COVID, where do they fall in the list? I'm assuming they're making the assumption these people have some kind of an immunity already. So you would be further down the list?
It is probably going to be very similar to most vaccines and viruses like shingles and stuff. Just because you go and get it, they still recommend that you get another shot just to build up your immunity. But that information isn't available yet.
Okay, so again, not to belabor, but let's assume I'm in that 1A group, but I've had it and I got better. Would I be able to get the vaccine? This is really more for informational purpose for those people. Can I then get the vaccine right away or do you have to wait?
Right now, you will be able to get that vaccine, but you will be in that last group because you're under 65 and you have no underlying health risks.
No. Yeah. You're talking about me personally?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand that. What I was assuming is, let's assume we had someone in that 1A group who had COVID and got through it.
Okay.
Are they able to get the vaccine right away? That was my question. It wasn't a personal question for me.
Yes, they are giving a lot of medical guidance during that time through our medical directors. And yes, at this point, I understand that they are.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I thought I saw Mr. Veliver's hand up.
Yep. Oh, great. Maura, thank you very much. And I know you're having a lot of fun with this project. Keep him busy, that's for sure. Question for you. When it comes to kids, school-age kids, especially the young kids, they are where in the order? I think they're probably near the end, right?
They are at the very tail end.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good. I mean, that's fine. I just have some concerns about a no vaccine on our youngest children.
Yeah.
But I think.
Yeah, the vaccines, whenever you give vaccines for children, it's a much more rigorous testing process. And these vaccines that are Pfizer's and Moderna were not meant to go to children.
Okay.
So I cannot tell you. There probably is someone out there working on a vaccine, but it hasn't gotten to the point because it's much more rigorous.
Okay. And is that 18 and up? Is there an age that 18's the cutoff?
18 is the cutoff.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I had a quick question. Yeah, thank you. Maura, thank you, of course, for all you've been doing, you and your team. My question goes to once you get the vaccines and you're setting up appointments and you're scheduling all this stuff and we're using the pool as maybe one of the places to have it done, are we operating under retail hours or is it going to be a narrow thing because they don't have as many to inject? How's that going to work?
Yeah.
Or do you have to figure that out as you go along?
We've had discussions with Sean, because it's all trying to meet the needs of who, has to get it. You know, we do have availability of people that work during, normal work hours. We can be as flexible as we can because our job is to get the vaccine to the people. So what I'm envisioning is that maybe we have one or two during the day to meet those full-time people that can come at that time. But I would imagine that we have a lot of people that work and can't come. So we will have to meet those needs with either after work hours or on Saturdays or Sundays. I don't want to take up the whole day because, it's a lot. But I'm just thinking like a 1 or 2 hour. We were able to do about 50 people per hour when we did the drive-through flu clinic. So we know that we can do that fast. Now, this is going to be a little different because we have a whole new computer platform that we have to go through, but we're not collecting papers or anything, and we're not collecting insurance and stuff. That's all done ahead. All the checks and balances have done ahead. All we're doing is calling you in, giving you the shot, and getting you out. And if we have 6 stations set up, we can get people through pretty fast.
Like the testing process in a way, as simple as that. Right. Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none, thank you, Maura, once again, on behalf of not only the town council, but our entire community, to you and your staff for all of the work you're doing. I know you're working around the clock. You must be very tired. And I just want to say, from a personal experience, because as you know, I've had to interact personally with you guys, and some of my family has. And in the face of adversity, your staff has been thorough, responsive, and very compassionate. And I just think that's a testament to you, your staff, and how they look at our community. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, the Orris family, and again, on behalf of the entire council and our community. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. I will relay that message to them because it's a long haul for everyone working 24/7, Saturdays and Sundays. So they appreciate that. So thank you.
Please do. I have spoken with Kate about it, and but please do pass that along to your entire staff.
Okay. I will.
Thank you, Maura.
You're welcome. I'm going to go so Evan can have his room back.
Good night, Maura.
Sorry.
We're now going to move on to item 4B, which is School Modernization Committee update. And we have Chairwoman Jen Bates here. Jen, thank you for being here tonight.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So the School Modernization Committee has been very busy. We are analyzing a variety of different options for the town. Currently, we have 4 major options. Each one of those major options has some minor tweaks and sub-options within them. And we are analyzing the feasibility of all of those, the timing, the cost, and trying to figure out which one of those options makes the most sense for the town in all of those respects. Fixing priority issues, costs to taxpayers, and all of that other important work that's being done is being analyzed. So we're plugging along. We're doing a lot of work and research. And at the same time, we're also facilitating our subcommittees, which one is our communications subcommittee, which is going to be very important to getting public comments from people. We're going to be issuing a survey in the future to the town to get their input as far as what people or how people feel that we should be proceeding. And then we have another subcommittee that talks about those options on a weekly basis with our consultants. And we're looking forward to forming a new subcommittee that will be analyzing all the financial impact in detail and being very thorough with that. We are plugging along and targeting a March 1st deadline for having everything finalized as far as what recommendation we're going to be going with to the town council and the Board of Education. And at that point, we'll have some time to tweak it and figure out what works best and get some input from the town council and the Board of Ed. And at that point, we have to start filling out paperwork to have a grant submitted by June 30th.
Thank you very much, Jen. I'll open it up to questions or comments from members of the council. Okay, seeing none. Jen, thank you and your committee. I know you've been working really hard. It's a tough task, and a number of council members, including Board of Ed members, are also very active on that committee amongst members of the community. And as I said last night in the SMC meeting, the council is certainly looking forward to collaborating in this regard. We recognize we need to balance the needs of the schools with the fiscal requirements of our community and our taxpayers. And as I said last night, that's not an easy task. So you guys have a tough task ahead of you, but I know you've got a lot of committed, good people working hard to try to find something that we can afford to advance that gets this process finally moving. So as I said last night, the council is here to help. I think everybody is supportive of rolling out a plan of some sort. Hopefully we can come together to something that we all think works. And again, we're looking forward to working with your committee and the Board of Ed to try to get something to the community that makes sense.
Great. Yep. We have a great committee and we appreciate all of the support that we've been getting from all the town councilors and the Board of Ed as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jen, and thanks for taking the time. I know you're busy with your family and all that you do, so thank you for being here tonight.
Rob, I think Tim has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tim.
I did have one question. It just occurred to me. I know you sort of laid out a little bit of what you're doing. I know you're busy. I've been following meetings and your minutes. But without putting a spot, could you just give us some of the benchmarks? I know they're talked about in your meetings and things like that. By that, what I mean is, you mentioned as one of your last statements that you have to prepare a grant application for June. But we know you have a date certain, you want to get things to the council and the Board of Ed. Could you just outline maybe the 3 or 4 things that are sort of hopper, your targets right now?
You mean target for like timelines of deliverables?
Yeah, just targets primarily for getting your action so you get from point A to point B, and also the public information survey you're completing. Just a notion of a timeline, and if it's on the spot, I appreciate you. Just a generic thing that might fill us in.
Yeah, I can definitely give you a general timeline. We are working through the options now. We're hoping to narrow that down in the next month or so and targeting towards the end of January to be able to start whittling that list down from the 4 that we have down to a more manageable number. Because like I said, even though there's 4 major options, each one of those has some sub options. So we're looking at possibly 10 or 12 different scenarios right now. So we're looking to narrow that down towards the end of January and then working through the last final options in February with a March 1st deliverable. The survey that I talked about, that will be more like the January, February, possibly March timeframe, just to get some feedback from the town as far as what we're going to be successful with, and that will be worked into the plan as we discuss it with the town council and the Board of Ed after the March 1st deadline. So that March 1st deadline is really just for us to come to you guys with our recommendations. And then we will have some time in there, March, April timeframe to tweak it and review the numbers and make sure that everyone's comfortable with it. And then that June 30th deadline is for our grant application. And we're hoping to go to referendum in November.
Okay, thank you, Jen. That was perfect. On the spot, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Any other questions or comments for Ms. Bates? Seeing none, thank you again, Jen, for being here, and we look forward to collaborating further.
Thank you. If anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to contact me anytime.
Great. Thanks very much. Have a
Thank
great
you.
night.
Yep, bye-bye.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 4C, public comments. Ms. Talbot, any public comment?
Just checking, we have none.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to number 5, approval of minutes of the regular meeting of November 10th, 2020 and special meeting of November 24th, 2020.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Valiber. Any questions or comments regarding this? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We're going to move on to consent calendar. Mr. Bowery.
Mr. Chairman, be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 120820-1. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves the consent calendar for December 8th, 2020 as follows, and it's written.
Thank you, Mr. Bowery. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Pavano. Mr. Bowery, anything to add?
Just the very generous community again, as we see month after month with this pandemic and beneficiaries, adopt a family and others. There's also some grants in here for preservation of some documents with the town clerk's office, and also a grant for some substance abuse in the human services area. So these are good, important for the community, and it's good that we have these to help us out and watch our budget.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barr. Do we have any questions or comments from members of the council on the consent calendar? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Barry. We're going to move on to new business, 9A, acceptance and appropriation of a $14,500 appropriation of $14,500 from Chester's Light of Hope to the Human Services gift account to help our residents in need. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves resolution number 120820-2. Be it resolved that the Town Council accepts and appropriates a $14,500 donation from the Cheshire's Lights of Hope to the Human Services account for residents in need.
Second.
My apologies, I was muted. We have a second, Mr. Veliver?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Mr. Walsh?
Well, I am honored to be giving this resolution. This is many of you know, this is an organization that my wife and I founded 16 years ago. And we were pleased that was the year that we hit the $1 million raised mark in our little town of Cheshire, which is an incredible amount of money. And this money is staying within this community, which we are so happy to be able to do. We gave a similar check to the Cheshire Community Food Pantry as well back in November. And we also gave money to the Pettit Family Foundation, and we are giving out two $2,000 scholarships to kids in our community who do a lot of volunteer work. This organization could not function without the help of our businesses, our residents, and our many volunteers, as well as an executive committee that is unbelievably generous with their time. So I'm happy that I was able to present this resolution today, and we were able to raise the amount we donated this year on top of the $14,500 we gave in November. We had also given the Human Services an additional $5,000 back in April. So we thank the town for the town residents and businesses for supporting this organization.
Well, thank you, Mr. Walsh, and we're certainly honored to have you do the resolution because we know your charity does such great work for this community. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions or comments from members of the council. Okay, seeing none, I guess I'll just follow up to say thank you again, Don, to you and your wife and all of your volunteers who work so hard for this community through the Cheshire's Lights of Hope. All this money goes directly to great use here in our community, and we're very grateful that you were able to be here tonight, not only to offer the money to the town, but also to accept it on behalf of the town as a town council member. So I think it's great that the community understands how much you do give back to this community, not only in your charity, but in your work here as a town council member. So thank you. And with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Thank you again, Mr. Walsh. We are going to move on to 9B, approval of the 2021 regular town council meeting schedule. With that, Ms. Pavano?
Yes, be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 120820-3. Be it resolved that the town council approves the following meeting dates for the 2021 town council regular meetings. All meetings are held in the town council chambers on the second Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. unless otherwise indicated. I think we might have to add Zoom in there.
For governor.
Yeah. This is just a regular calendar schedule. All the meetings are always on the second Tuesdays of the month.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Valver. Thank you, Ms. Pavano. I think you just kind of said it all. I don't know that you need to say much more about it. I think this is just standard operating procedure as a council. and kind of a formality for us every year. So are there any questions or comments from members of the council on this? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. I'm going to jump over 9C and D as we're going to go into executive session at about 8 o'clock when our attorney, one of our attorneys is available. So we'll move on to, well, Mr. Golak is here. I almost hate to go to 9F because this could be an hour presentation and we'll be an hour late to our executive session. Only teasing, John. Yes, Mr. Slocum.
I just have a question.
Robert,
Are you going
missed
to
9C.
pass over C, the legislative recommendations?
I erroneously passed over C, so no, that was not my intention. Thank you, Mr. Slocum.
But I'd be
you're
fine
on
to have
hold,
John
buddy.
go first, you know,
We're
whatever
gonna
you
go
want.
Back to 9C, discussion and possible approval of legislative recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Slocum. You're a good wingman. Mr. Veliver.
You're muted, Dave.
The best person I've heard from Mr. Veliver.
What you would think I was we'd all be ready to hit the unmute button, right? Be it resolved, the town council approves resolution 120820-4. Be it resolved, the town council approves the legislative recommendations as presented. Mr. Chairman, do you want me to go through them?
Yeah, why don't you just give us the header of them individually? That'd be great.
Gotcha. So one is concerns with the 2020 Police Accountability Bill. 2 is the juvenile justice reform. 3 is prevailing wage. 4 is binding arbitration. 5 is enabling legislation for community choice aggregation for energy. And then a couple Cheshire specific requests. 6 is the transfer of the bus station depot property from the Connecticut to the town of Cheshire, and upgrading of Route 68 and 70.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Back to you, Mr. Veliver.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. We talked about many of these at our last meeting. We talked about the police accountability bill. We had Chief Drive talk a little bit about the concerns that we have with that, as well as the juvenile justice reform bill, which we think might be somewhat leading to some of our rash of car break-ins and some other issues around. We've had some discussions over the years regarding prevailing wage, where we would like the state to adopt the revision of the prevailing wage threshold from $400,000 to $1 million on some smaller projects, which would help save the town a lot of money. We also have discussed the issue before of binding arbitration and the cost that that has on municipalities. One of the things that was new last year was the enabling legislation for community choice aggregation for energy. And this would pass some enabling legislation to allow the town residents additional options and choices for the purchase of energy, utility services, and products. And we also talked a little bit about this in the past, the transfer of the school bus depot over there on Sandbank Road, which right now we rent it from the town. We would like to possibly acquire that property. And also, one of the things that's we're going to talk about that's new, sort of that we kicked around last meeting, but we settled on adding this one to the this list, was the state route 68 and 70, primarily the West Main Street area, to be a bike route in the Connecticut DOT's active transportation plan. We hope that that area might be a good economic area, and hopefully that something like this would help increase some people going to that area, and also help just make that area more thriving area with multiple situations there, and hopefully also make some of that route more safe. So those are some of the items we had on there, and this is what we're going to present hopefully to our legislative delegation who's coming to our meeting next week on the 15th. So
thank you very much, Mr. Veliver.
Make a
Question,
comment?
Mr. Jinks?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I like this list. I'm supportive of this list. I would like to add, for us to consider adding back in the speed limits legislation, and also the crosswalk legislation we talked about last time, and it was included in our list last year. Both of these items are measures that are potentially important to reducing pedestrian fatalities on our roads in Connecticut. They're important for keeping, people walking and running and biking safer. They are both, I'm told, going to be brought to the Transportation Committee again this year. Most likely will pass out of there since they did last time, 2019. Both of those measures passed the House of Representatives with, near unanimous support from both sides of the aisle. So I would like to see both of those things, both of those items put back into this list. I think, we have 7 items. I know we're trying to kind of limit our focus. I don't think 9 items is too much for the long session ahead that we're going to have this year in the legislature. So I guess I'd like to make a motion to add those 2 back into this, to our legislative recommendations, if you please.
Okay, Mr. Jinks has a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Talbot. Any conversation on this motion? I think Mr. Jinks gave us his summary as to why he recommends that we add these 2 back in and modify the resolution. Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, I understand where Jim's coming from on that, but I also specifically asked Chief Drive last time about those 2 specific items, and he, him being the leader of our public safety, wasn't in favor of those, and I have to concede to him on some of those. He was concerned about some of that. He didn't have an issue with the speed limit that much, but he was just concerned lowering a speed limit could end up causing more accidents, he said. So I just think that 7 items is a lot as it is, and I'm just wondering how much we're going to get from them out of the 7, let alone 9.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Other comments or
I
questions?
could just respond. I just like to respond to that real quick.
Go ahead, Mr. Jinks.
The last thing Chief Stratton said about the speed limit bill was that as an option, having it as an option, he thought that was fine. He did express some of those concerns, as I think many of us did. Again, it's not something that the legislation will not allow us to reduce the speed limit at will. We would have to we'd have to offer it up for public review, get feedback. We'd have to decide then as a council. So it wouldn't, it just gives us an option to lower speed limits someplace in town if we so wish to. To me, it seems like, most communities in the state seem to want to be able to have that option. I'm not sure, I just don't quite understand why we would want to have that option as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Any other questions or comments from members of the council? I would just make a few comments based on, we had some dialogue on these 2 items, and we have had some discussion amongst all of us, and I think there was some consensus to end up with the 7 that are in the original resolution. And I think the reason being is that there were some concerns that while they're on the face of it sounds like these 2 additional items would provide additional safety, practically, at least in my opinion, I'm not convinced they do. And we talked about a variety of scenarios, particularly Mountain Road. It's, we post 25 miles an hour and no one even goes 25 miles an hour. If we posted it at 15, I don't think anyone would adhere to that either. And I think there were some concerns about changing the law relative to people in the crosswalk as well, or outside of the crosswalk on the sidewalk and cars having to stop, and whether that actually enhances safety or actually could cause more of a traffic scenario where some people don't know if they have to stop or go. I think I want to be very clear, because I'm not going to support adding these 2 back in, but I want the community to be very clear that if I truly felt these were safety items that would practically work, I would certainly be in favor of them. But I heard enough information, particularly as Mr. Wall said, from our chief of police, who is really our expert on this, that practically he didn't see these things being really enhancing safety. And while we could have them in our quiver, practically they probably wouldn't do anything, and we might not ever use them. Particularly, at least I'm losing my mind on the word I'm trying to use. Speed limit issue. Thank you. As to whether we'd actually use the speed limit scenario. So, Mr. Jinks, I certainly appreciate where you're going with this, and I'm not trying to demean where you're coming with it. it's just something I think we all decided that we were looking to try to limit the amount of things that we put in front of our delegation so that we can hope that they would pay more attention to the items that we felt were most important. And again, for me, if I really thought this would create a safety scenario, I would support them, but practically, I don't think they will. So I'm going to vote against the resolution on the table at the moment. I see we have another question from Mr. Veliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I agree with you. And I see these issues, maybe not, the same way as Jim, but I understand the concept behind them. But the other thing too I have is right, we're trying to limit these. And also, these are things that, as Councilman Jinks even said, these are things which are probably going to come up anyway, whether we put them on our legislative agenda or not. So these are going to be things that the people who are already there are already thinking about. I mean, one of the things that I think of when I'm looking at this legislative agenda are things that they're not thinking about, but that affect us as a town, and that we want them to sincerely think about. And so these two items, although potentially have some merit, are things that they're going to pick up and carry on and go to the Transportation Committee, and they're already going to be thinking about these things. So I would like our delegation to think about the things that are going to affect this town directly that they're perhaps not thinking about, like binding arbitration. And so I'd like to try to keep that list as small as possible and try to focus our energies on a smaller list of things that are not things that they're already going to take up and run with. So.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Any other questions or comments on the motion on the table? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? I'm sorry, Mr. Talbot, can we back up? All those in favor of the motion by Mr. Jinks to add the two items back in?
Thank you.
Those opposed? Okay, the motion fails. 2 in favor, Mr. Talbot and Mr. Jinks, and the balance voted against. With that, we'll go back to the original resolution, which I believe had a second, and we had some conversation on it. Is there any other deliberation with the original resolution to include the legislative recommendations as originally proposed? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? It looks like this motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to move on to, I think, Sean, I'm going to go to Mr. Golak first, and then we'll go into executive session. This way he doesn't have to sit and wait. And John, it's certainly appropriate that when I'm trying to tease you earlier, I pass right over one of my agenda items. So certainly appropriate when I'm trying to tease you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
We're going to move on to 9F, discussion regarding parks and field use fee changes. Thank you, Mr. Golak. And I want to let you know that, you are doing a phenomenal job. We are so happy that you're here running our Park and Rec department. We've seen a remarkable kind of push forward with that department, and everyone that I interact with in our community is speaking really, really strongly about what a great job you and your staff are doing, and how collaborative you are trying to make things better in those areas. And I certainly hear great things from our Park and Rec committee as well. So I just want to thank you for all you're doing now that you're here, and all your staff as well. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Golak.
Sure. Thank you. It takes a team and it takes cooperation. And I've been getting it everywhere from town staff, you folks, my commission, and the team back at the office. I'll keep it brief. Basically, my early months here, taking a look at things, seeing where I could make some impact and change. One of them was facility rentals. To the amount of non-resident commercial rentals requests that I've gotten. Our fees are very, very nominal. So basically my request is to take a look at the ball field fee schedule for commercial and non-resident, not residents, and make a change to that to any recommendation. I'm open to recommendations. I did make some here in my presentation. Cheshire's fees for facilities are extremely low. in comparison to other towns. Basically, all I'm looking to do is Sean just is sharing his screen, taking a look at the priorities, the priority groups, is just add to what we already have in our system, a priority group 4, spelling out for-profit, non-resident groups. There's another schedule that Sean could show up later, but I'm looking to go for that priority 4 group, for-profit, non-resident groups, from $25 an hour to $75 an hour. If you take a look at the chart that was included in your packet, surrounding towns, it ranges from $50 to $120. If you look at that box in the gray, Cheshire's listed up top, highlighted across the top in yellow. Right now, we're currently at $25 an hour for everything: residents, nonprofit, non-resident, commercial. Wallingford, I established that fee over 12 years ago. Probably should be looked at. Southington is $50 an hour. Meriden is $75 an hour during the week, $90 on the weekends. North Haven Public Works handles all of their fees and all their scheduling. I'm not sure our Public Works Department would want to take that on, but going down the list, Cromwell 50, Farmington 55, and then Glastonbury has a charge for the daytime and then a 100% increase over the nighttime. If you recall back at the budget time, during my 3-hour presentation, I had that one sheet on the facilities. And, one of the things that concerns me is that some of these rentals require public works maintainers. And those guys are coming out, they're getting call out for $65 an hour, and we're not recouping it. Their public works is just utilizing overtime funds and taking care of whatever field prep or maintainer needs for that particular group, either for the weekend or for the day's event. So we really don't have a mechanism to recover those costs. So I've been talking with Sean and Jim Jascott earlier in this fall to explore creating a special fund, not only for programs, but for facilities as well. And talking with the budget committee earlier, those fees that are collected from facility rentals can also be put back to improve our facilities, or if there's some shortfalls with public works, or there's a particular league or a group that, we needed to sod a goal crease, or we needed some signage, or we needed to add some extra clay to a field, or buy some bases, or you get the drift, any seed for lawn treatments. That can come out of this particular fund, but we'll come back to you at budget time when we're ready to kind of give you the whole picture of what a special fund would be for programs and facilities. My main goal is just really trying to bring our commercial and non-resident fees to market rates. Those groups, and I did highlight some of the groups that over the last couple of years have been utilizing our fields that I would say are commercial, even though some of them do have a Cheshire address, they are a commercial establishment. In a non-typical summer, we brought in $8,200. If the fee was at $75, that same rental, $8,200, would have netted us another $16,000. I've been doing this for a long time. These groups will keep coming. I don't think that the raise from $25 to $60, or what I'm proposing is $75, is going to, hurt any way of what we're bringing in for revenue right now. In fact, I just think that more people would end up coming. So without that, I'll entertain some questions unless you need some more information.
No, I think that's great, Mr. Golak. Thank you. I'll certainly open it up to question or comment from members of the council. Mr. Bowery?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Earlier, we had a initial discussion with this, and quite frankly, as a budget committee, as a council member and the fiduciary of our town resources, I'm all in favor of revenue enhancement if it's done reasonably, and this puts us in a reasonable rate. I think that's good. But at the same time, the director gave us good assurances that we're not exacerbating an issue that came before us several months ago. When a resident who runs a very fine program, sports, said that there was a difficulty with the pricing. That had to do with indoor facility and had to do with the school. So I wanted to receive assurances that we weren't exacerbating any perceived issues in town, and we weren't going to hurt any of our own residents who are already taxpayers and paying for the fields. And we're not. This was approved by Park and Rec. It's perceived as fair. I'm not so sure about setting up the enterprise fund or whatnot. I tend to think that the more of those you have, the more complicated things can get. But I am in favor of considering the raising of the rates. And I think they'd like to know by midwinter because you start getting your sports groups in. So we have time. Tonight doesn't have to be a motion to do this. The item is actually for discussion. And I'm in favor of it. And I think the budget committee looked favorably on the idea of raising the rates.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maury. I think I saw Mr. Slocum.
Yeah, I'll be at that budget meeting as well. And one of the things Mr. Golick spoke to was that he would like to have some resolution to this simply because January he prepares field use scheduling. And obviously, people coming from out of town need to know what routes are going to be and blah, 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 and so forth. So I wondered if, in fact, we, consider this and move it at a later time. Could we move on it as early as our December 15th meeting, or is that exclusively reserved for the legislative session? The legislator people that are going to be with us, or is it something John could live with comfortably in your scheduling mode, delayed for our January 11th meeting, which would be our first meeting of the coming year?
Yeah, I don't need an answer or reply until the beginning of February. So however you want to deal with it in January, that'll be fine.
Okay, it just helps paint our picture for us because we all know our meeting is January 11th, the first we're going to have that we probably take this, I would think.
Yeah, I'm certainly flexible. I'm certainly flexible. I could wait, through the month of January, whatever meeting needed to happen to discuss it further.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Slocum. And we certainly could put it to the agenda in our next meeting in December if we wanted to, but sounds like it's not that time sensitive where we couldn't push it to our first January meeting. And I just want to make sure that all of our council members have an opportunity to review it, digest it, think about it, ask questions if they have any. We do have a resolution in the packet. I'm suggesting that it's just for discussion tonight. Obviously, any of you can take that resolution and advance it if you'd like to. But I think that it needs some further deliberation on our part. And I want to be very clear to the public that this is really looking to just enhance rates for those groups that are out of town for-profit entities and will not impact our local taxpayer not-for-profit groups at all. This is just to get parity with what other communities are generally charging to these, outside groups or for-profit groups, so that we can offset some of the costs that we are incurring that Mr. Golick referenced relative to maintenance of maintenance individuals, not to mention maintenance of the fields and maintaining those fields. So I think it's an appropriate way to go. I will certainly support it, but I would like an opportunity to kind of digest the numbers and make sure that when we do vote, we are completely comfortable with it. I am very comfortable though, because I know, Mr. Talbot is on the Park and Rec committee. That's an excellent committee. I'm sure they have vetted this well. And I'm certainly glad that they overwhelmingly support this from what I'm told. So that certainly gives me some comfort. But unless anyone has any objections, we'll push this either to our next December meeting or January. So I guess if I don't see any objections, I do want to make sure I get back to seeing if there's any more questions or comments from members of the council for Mr. Golick.
I just had one quick comment.
Yeah, Mr. Jinks.
John, maybe I missed it earlier. When we talked about it in budget, you had talked about about the Public Works maybe collecting some revenue as well for kind of preparing fields for some of these groups and special events and things. Did you mention that to us as the full council in your presentation?
Yes, I did. So that was, I just kind of glossed over it really quick that
Okay.
there really wasn't a mechanism to collect those fees. You know, when Public Works dispatches or when we pass on a request for field needs for a prep or a maintainer, we don't really have a mechanism to charge or to recoup that $67 an hour charge. And so I'd like that ability to at least pass that along to this particular group for that event so that, you know, the town isn't plowing through its overtime account.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you'd gotten that out
Yep.
there. So I thought that was an important point from earlier. So
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Jenks. Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, thank you, Johnny. You guys are doing a great job there. I have to say. Quick question: the money, the additional funds that you will be raising, will those be going directly to better upkeep of the fields? Because one of the biggest things I've heard from people around town is you know the condition of our fields are not in the greatest shape, and you know they compare us to other towns. And maybe now we know why other towns had better conditioned fields was because they were getting a higher rate. But is that where the funds are really going to be going towards, going right back into upkeep of the fields, or?
So those are some things that we'll have to probably come back and circle back to you when we do the budget. I would like to pursue a special fund, but that's something that I need to discuss further with Jim Jascott and Sean as we
Don,
get closer to the budget.
To answer your question right now, if nothing else changed, that's general fund revenue. So it comes in the general fund like everything else.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any other questions or comments from members of the council? Okay, and again, I assume we're all good with just deferring a decision on this till one of our next meetings?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Mr. Gawlik, thank you again for being here and doing such a great job with your staff. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks
And
for your
with that, we're gonna
consideration.
go back to item 3, items for executive session to discuss labor negotiations and contract negotiations to include our town manager, assistant town manager. Good night, John.
Hey, thanks.
I believe we have our 2 attorneys, Mr. Dugas and Mr. Smith. And Sean, is there anyone else that's going to be coming into executive session?
I think I heard you. I think that covered everybody.
Yeah,
Well,
we got
Mr.
you and Arnett and our 2 attorneys.
And Lou and Jared.
Yep. Mr.
I'm sorry,
Zorro
Mr.
and Mr.
Sicko, and then I don't see
Massiana and
Is Vin going?
and Mr. Massiana. Okay.
And Mr.
and
Zullo.
Dr. Solon may be joining as well.
Okay, so I think we got them all. We've got our town manager, our assistant town manager, our 2 town attorneys, members of Board of Ed staff, Mr. Massiana and Dr. Solon. I see we have Mr. Sitko, and did I miss anybody that time?
I think you're good.
Okay, so we have a motion to go into executive session to include
So moved.
individuals. Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Velliver. Thank you, Ms. Pavano. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we're all going to log off. in there with us. We're going to get back to our regularly scheduled council meeting and get back to item 9D, which is discussion and possible action regarding the Board of Ed teachers' labor agreements. And with that, I'll turn to Ms. Nichols.
Don't you have to come out of executive session?
We already did that.
Oh, okay.
All right, now
I missed that.
you're giving me back, Mr. Orris. I wasn't paying attention. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, I'm
It
going
was
to
Mr.
the,
Felber and
just getting
myself.
back to the resolutions, to item 9D, which is discussion and possible action regarding the Board of Ed teachers' labor agreement.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And you wish me to read those resolutions? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
No.
I do, if you don't mind, unless, if you're not prepared,
I'm
we can
fine.
certainly have
No,
Mr.
no.
Barr redo it.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay.
These are, so we're going to start with the education teachers first, correct?
Yeah, which is 9D.
Right, exact, 9D. Okay. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 120820-5. Be it resolved that the town council approves the Education Association of Cheshire Collective Bargaining Agreement as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols.
Second.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Ms. Nichols?
Well, we were presented with a lot of information last time, and we have discussed it at great length, and the resolution as it was presented was quite complicated and with a lot of pages. How much detail do you want to go into, Rob, with actual numbers and things like that, or?
I leave that to you, Sylvia. I mean, we've certainly seen a lot of this information, so I don't think you need to get into too much detail.
I think I will advance my own personal, it's a 4-year contract with increases starting, and I don't have that page in front of me, so I'm afraid that I don't have that one right in front of me because I wasn't.
I have it in front of me, Ms.
Why
Nichols.
don't you read that? That would be.
And in the wage increases in year 1 is 1.75% all in with no step.
Right.
Year 2, 2.56% all in, with a 1.23% general wage increase and a 1.33% step. The year 3 is 2.79% all in, 1.5% general wage increase, and a 1.29% step. And then year 4 is 3.02% all in, 1.75% general wage increase, and 1.27% step.
Okay, and if you want to discuss that, Sandy Pavano was probably more involved in the negotiation of these contracts, or she wasn't negotiating, but she followed the Board of Education discussion about it. Sandy, do you have anything that you might add? I was not part of that discussion. You want to add to that?
Well, we started out at a very low rate, but once they went to mediation, everything was thrown out. So I don't know. I'm really not happy with this contract, but I think the year 4, year 3 and 4 are very high, but I do think that, our teachers are going through a lot with this pandemic and everything else. And I will reluctantly support this contract.
Thank you, Ms. Ravana. Let me just add a little more specific so that we can get it on the record. The medical benefits side of this, the HSA co-share increases 1% annually from 14% to 18% by the end of the contract. Also, there's a 1% annual increase. This 1% annual increase saves about $50,000, $55,000 per year. So it is significant, which again, we're increasing the share to the employees. So that's a savings to the town. The HSA core plan remains the same, and the deductibles remain at $2,250/$4,500. So, one of the things that jumped out at me is that there was an acknowledgement that the HSA co-share was on the low side, and I certainly appreciate the fact that the teachers were willing to increase that to end at 18%, which I think is more market and does give us the $55,000 per year in savings. So. That's kind of the facts on it. And with that, I'll open it up to questions or comments from members of the council.
I'll just comment. I just to apologize because I lost the piece of paper and I didn't want to give the incorrect facts, but thank you, Rob, for that. As Sandy said, I will be supporting this contract. The teachers done a good job. We have experienced savings, as Rob delineated. I am not happy with the 4th year of the contract, but in retrospect, I think that overall it gives us the best contract we can expect right now. So I will support it reluctantly, but I will support it.
Any other questions or comments, Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, I'm going to say that I will support this as well. Part of it is that with the step part, we just found out that 62% of our teachers will be already at the full step at the beginning of this contract, and then 72 by the end. So that will lighten the load a little bit on that. And the teachers have been working extremely hard. And, you know, I get that, like Sandy said, it's not the best that we wanted, but it's something that we feel that it's the only way we can get this contract done is without going to arbitration. If we went to arbitration, I think it would be a difficult win for us. And I think that we should just support this one the way it is.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any other questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none, I have a couple of comments. Following up on what you just said, Mr. Walsh, one of the things that jumped out for me was, again, understanding where many of these teachers are at top step between 60 and 70% by the end of the 60 now, 62% now, and 72% by the end, which means that they're only going to be getting in years 2, 3, and 4, 1.23%, 1.5%, and 1.75% in general wage increase. So they won't be getting a step. So, you know, I think that's an important point to reference. I also, again, want to acknowledge the fact that we are increasing their contribution to the HSA plan to become what I believe is more market, which saves the community $55,000 per year by increasing it 1% per year. I think the deductibles are very market driven. So while at the end of the day, I'm not in love with, you know, the total wage increases here, I think the risk to go to arbitration is great. There's obviously some other components of this contract that weighed on me as well that I thought the community, we would have some risk if we went to arbitration. And then the final piece is what I think a lot of us have said. I think the teachers have endured a lot this year. And so at the end of the day, while this isn't a perfect contract, in my opinion, financially, in light of what's going on economically and what a lot of the private sector and our taxpayers are having to endure, many of them are happy to have jobs and many of them are working for maybe less or equal to what they received last year. But nonetheless, I don't see any reason to not approve this at this time. I think it's the best we're going to do, and I will certainly support it as well. Any other questions or comments? I see Mr. Slocum.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I think it is worth noting that our past 4-year contract was 12% increase over a 4-year period. It did include an arbitration award on behalf of the town brought upon the system because the town council's diligence. This one is less than that over 4 years. It's just under 11%, which I think is important to note, that there is at least some. I think the folks at home should also know we have about only 10 less teachers in the system, even though student enrollment is down. But that's really in recognition of just how complicated teaching has become over the last 15 years with all the, it's just complicated industry, so to speak. And while I have thought maybe it should be lower upon edification, you recognize the fact that, you know, the school district has a lot of special needs and special assistance programs, as well as just specialty education for our sophisticated students in general. So we do sit with a lot of teachers and fewer students, but again, I think this is a relatively modest pay increase, except for year 4, which I think is a bit rich, but I'm not gonna go crazy over that. So I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Any other questions or comments from members of the council before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution on the table?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 9 E, which is discussion and possible action regarding the Board of Ed Administrators Labor Agreements. Ms. Nichols, you okay with this one?
I am. And are we doing the first choice? How are we doing this?
You can do it either way, whatever your preference is, and the vote will go accordingly.
Well, which do you want me to advance?
Well, I think we often go in the positive and vote for or against it. It's
Okay.
easier not to be confused that
That's
way.
what I thought. That I just wanted to make sure. That's how
Agreed.
I can do that. All right. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 120820-6. Be it resolved that the town council approves the Cheshire Public Schools Administrative Personnel Collective Bargaining Agreement.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Back to you, Ms. Nichols.
Okay, back to me again. Okay, this particular contract was negotiated with several items in it, which I can interpret, but the first increase here, now this is teachers. I have the wrong page again.
I have it,
Oh,
Ms.
you do it.
Nichols.
I have the
Yep.
wrong page. And
Yep,
since
no
there-
problem.
Right, okay.
The wage increase it's a 3-year contract. The first year is 1.75% all in, 1.3% general wage increase, and a 0.45% step. Year 2 is 2.5% all in, 2.2% general wage increase, and 0.3% step. Year 3, 2.65% all in, 2.58% general wage increase, and 0.07% in step. The HSA co-share in year 1 does not change. It stays at 11%. In year 2, it goes to 12.5%. And then in the final year 3 goes to 14%. The HSA deductibles remain at $2,000/$4,000. And they are also asking for an additional $1,000 contribution to their 403B annuity account. So that's generally the terms and conditions on our table.
Thank you. I have nothing to add. I mean, those are the facts. So
Correct. Any
turn it over
questions
to
or
you.
comments from members of the council on this proposal? Mr. Barwin?
Not to be a technocrat here, but I'm not sure voting down a motion to approve is the same as rejecting. And I guess I just want to make sure that the town attorney feels that, because if we just simply don't approve it, that means we let the time run out. And I don't know that means it's rejected. So I just want to make sure we're not
Good
causing an
point.
issue.
That was my question to begin with. Which way do we
Yeah.
start? Right.
Because, well,
I think-
first I'd like that answer.
Yeah, I think David's right. It's much cleaner to do it as an acceptance or rejection.
I got you. I apologize for opining early.
Okay.
So that's okay, Mr. Slocum. So based on that, Ms. Nichols, would you like to modify your resolution?
And how would I modify that? We're going to reject the
Correct. So you would basically make a motion that says that the town council rejects the Cheshire Public Schools Administrative Personnel Collective Bargaining Agreement.
Okay, so I will read it that way. Be resolved that the town council approves, rejects the Education Association of Cheshire Collective Bargaining Agreement. And whoever.
Second.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, David, for clarifying that. That was.
Well, let me clarify this, folks, because you said the education. Let me reread this. It's be it resolved the town council rejects resolution number 120820-6. Be it resolved that the town council rejects the Cheshire Public Schools Administrative Personnel Collective Bargaining Agreement.
You're correct.
That's
I'm
the
sorry.
resolution on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. And we did, sorry, Ms. Nichols, I know I threw this on you last minute, so this is my fault.
I wasn't paying attention.
I did
My
give a
fault.
summary of the terms and conditions of the proposed contract that's in front of us. And at this point, I'll open it up for questions or comments from members of the council. Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of this contract as it is. I feel the additional $1,000 annuity to them is quite high. I also feel that they're 14, from what we heard, 14 out of 17 are already at full steps. So, there's a very small step increase, but that's why there's a bigger general wage increase in there. And I think we need to send a message to the citizens of Cheshire again, saying that, we stand behind you. We know that many people are suffering through this pandemic and out of work or on pay freezes. And, we stand behind you, and we're going to do the best we can to make sure that, we keep this town affordable for all. So I don't feel this is the best contract in my mind. So I will be voting to reject this contract as well.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any other questions or comments from members of the council? Okay, seeing none, I'll just make a brief comment. Agreed, Mr. Walsh. I think, a couple of things jumped out for me, and I will also be voting to reject this contract for a couple of reasons. Again, I think the general wage increases, there's very little in the step here, and I think that's purposeful. And so unlike the teacher's contract, which was split more appropriately, I think there is a bigger increase in the general wage increase, and that concerns me. I also am concerned in this day and age with the economy and the suffering that the private sector has, that we're asking for an additional $1,000 contribution to the 403B. I just can't, in good faith, support that at this moment. And I also don't think that the HSA co-share remaining at 11% for the first year and only going to 14% reflects the market at all. I think it's significantly below where we see a lot of the other communities. So for those reasons, plus the fact that I do think that we need to send a message, as Mr. Walsh says, to the community that we understand the plight of the environment today and how much many are suffering. And because of the differences between the administrative contract and what I talked about on the teacher's contract, to me, there's enough differences here for me to support going to arbitration on this and not accepting this contract as it's presented. So I do that reluctantly. I want to say that I absolutely respect and admire the work that these administrators do. My vote tonight is nothing to disrespect them. It certainly only reflects what I believe is some issues I just can't support in the contract, and recognizing what the community is going through and having to reflect that as the fiscal authority that we all have as a town council member. So, that's where I stand, unfortunately. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the council? Mr. Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize. I debated whether I was going to say anything or not, but I truly wrestled with this one and feel like I've flip-flopped probably 5 times on it. But I will echo your sentiments in that I'm not all that convinced with 14 of the 17 at top step that were so out of line with our peers. We're not comparing salaries, we're comparing salary ranges. So I think once you look at the actual salaries, that we're probably very, very close to what our peers are in the DERG. Throw in the fact that we're the highest annuity that I saw out there, and we just increased that by $1,000. So I will stand with my colleagues in supporting the rejection of the admin contract tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. And I think I would just echo the fact that I think we've all struggled with this, as is evidence about the conversations we've been having. So we've all been on both sides of this and struggling with decision. Inevitably, we have to make a decision, and that's where we are. Mr. Veliver, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I wanted to echo some of the comments, Don and Rob, and also Peter. I echo those sentiments. I have some concerns about this contract myself, as far as the sort of the annuity, as well as, for me, I've, as I have expressed before, some concerns about the health contributions on the administrative side. And so I look at this contract as something that I think we need to help stand behind the residents of Cheshire, and from a tax perspective and a spending perspective, but also just look at this contract and whether this is really the best thing. So I too will be voting to reject the contract and send it to arbitration.
Thank you, Mr. Valover. Mr. Slocum.
In looking at the 3-year total increase for the 17 administrators, it's $191,000, including annuity. That amounts to a little over $11,000 per administrator over a 3-year period. I just think that's very rich. And administrators do have large responsibilities, and I recognize administrators have a tendency to make more than the workers they are responsible for. But in spite of that, I still think it's a little rich, and that's why I'll be supporting the motion tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Any other members of the council? Okay, seeing none. So at this point, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of rejecting the resolution of the contract with the administrators union, please signify by raising your hands. I'm going to count 1, 2. Looks like, Mr. Jenks, thank you. It looks like the motion to reject passes unanimously. Thank you. With that, we're going to move on to item G, discussion and possible action regarding the memorandum of understanding with the Regional Water Authority of Water Mains, possible executive session, which we don't have to worry about. At this point, I will be recusing myself from this matter. And if you don't mind, Mr. Slocum, as Vice Chairman, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll only take over this portion of the meeting. Okay, we are now dealing with G, which is the discussion of possible action regarding a memo of understanding with the Regional Water Authority of the Water Mains, possible executive session. We've been in executive session, and we are prepared to have this topic introduced. I think before I enter a motion, read a motion into the record, I think we'll I'll have asked that Jerry Sitko give just a basic synopsis of what we're voting upon. Mr. Sitko, you're there you go. You're muted, Jerry.
There we go. The town and the RWA have been working for the better part of a year to find a way forward to bring water service to the north end, particularly the interchange zone. And this, what you have in front of you is the culmination of those discussions. You know, infrastructure is important to development. Infrastructure is lacking, deficient in the interchange zone, both sewer and water. And this is our attempt at least to get the water service up in the interchange zone. Since 1927, Southington Water Authority has provided water service to a limited area in the interchange zone. At some point in the future, the RWA is going to take over that service and then extend water mains into the interchange zone. These mains are going to service future development in a major quadrant in the interchange zone, which is been approved for an 8-acre lot or 8-lot mixed-use subdivision. These mains will also service a 50-acre piece that the town hopefully will acquire from the state of Connecticut and attempt to develop. The MOU really reflects the town's financial contribution to the cost of the RWA's water main extensions. Particularly, the first financial contribution is the waiver of a pilot for the mains for the mixed use development for a 5-year period. The estimated cost of this pilot, which is a payment in lieu of taxes, is $175,000. That is $35,000 per year. That will only take effect after when and if the RWA takes ownership of the mains. The other financial consideration is a 50% waiver of the pilot for 5 years for the water mains along Route 10 and along the west side of the northwest quadrant connecting at Dickerman Road. This would service that part of town and bring a water service along Route 10 and also up Dickerman Road. The estimated cost of the 50% waiver of the pilot is $108,000 or $22,000 per year. And there's another contingency here, and this pilot would only take effect, or this waiver would only take effect upon the town's development of the state-owned property and interchange zone. That's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Well, Jerry, I think because you've done a good explanation, I'd like to introduce the resolution, and then we could get a second, hopefully, and then any questions after that, if that makes sense to all of you. Okay, here we go. Be it resolved, the town council approves resolution 120820-8. Be it resolved, the town council approves a memorandum of understanding between the Regional Water Authority and the town of Cheshire for water mains under the terms and conditions as presented in the MOU.
I will second, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Now I will entertain any questions, comments, whatever we may have for Jerry, Sean, whatever. Any comments? I will also note for the record that Chairman Rob Orris will not be voting on this matter when we are ready to vote. He will be recused. Any other questions before we put this to a vote? Okay, all those in favor of the motion before us, signify.
Aye.
Okay. Motion is unanimous of those present, which is all of us, and with one recusal from Chairman Orris. Okay. I will pass the baton back to Mr. Orris.
Thank you very much, Mr. Slocum. You're doing a great job. You should probably keep going. We're going to go on to 9H, which is discussion and possible action regarding waiver of bid for survey firm for the School Modernization Committee. And with that, I'll turn back to you, Mr. Slocum, if you don't mind.
Oh, not at all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. This motion is, be it resolved, the town council approves resolution 120820-9. Be it resolved, the town council approves a waiver of bid for $17,000 statistically significant survey of Cheshire residents regarding the possible school modernization proposals, and further approves hiring the Center for Research and Public Policy, Inc. for said survey and analysis.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Slocum?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Essentially, out of the funds that the council authorized well over a year ago, they are expending or hoping to expend with our approval $17,000 to hire a survey company that they've already interviewed, who has some significant experience in this role. They want to be prepared to engage the party. They obviously have to generate a lot of questions, the right questions, presented to, I believe, approximately 400 households in Cheshire, which is apparently statistically significant, for them to glean some results. I know the issue of timing is within the SMC, but it is something they want to be prepared for so that they can get that out there, as Jen explained to all of us earlier in her presentation. So that's essentially what we're doing, because it requires a vote of the council to waive a bid, but they're going to be expending money they already have. Ms. Nichols? Unmute, please.
I would like to request that your support for this. The committee is working very hard to get input throughout the community. The survey will not be done immediately, but as we develop a series of potentially viable options, and we will narrow it down and get community feedback. But the committee is doing all the hard work and lifting of financial discussions and building concerns and educational concerns. And once we come up with one or two or three scenarios which we feel potentially viable solutions. We would like input from the community. And this particular company has been highly recommended. They've done surveys for many school systems within the state of Connecticut very successfully. And so we would like to be able to use the funds that we have available to engage them at some point in this process, likely February or March. Not sure exactly what time frame.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. And just to put a little more backbone on this is the reason it's here is that anything over $15,000, if we're going to not be bidding a potential profession or use or any contract that we're pursuing, the maximum amount not to go to a competitive bid is $15,000. So the fact that this is $17,000, just over that threshold, necessitates a bid waiver by the town council. So that's why it's here. As Mr. Slocum said, we've already allocated money to the SMC for their use as they see fit to advance what they need to do for the town council. But this is really just a formality and a procedural issue to ensure we're doing everything correct under our charter. So that's why it's here. So with that, I guess I'll open it up for questions or comments from any members of the council.
Rob?
Yes, Mr. Veliver.
Yep. This is a question probably for Don and Sylvia as members of the committee. In your experience, obviously, in going around and seeing other schools and how they've done in other towns, how they've done their situation, do most of them have a survey, community survey as part of their school modernization process? Is that what you've been seeing in the other towns?
Yes, I would say the majority of them at some point in time have a community. And it's been very useful to many communities to have that. Ultimately, obviously, it's the SMC that will make the decisions as to the fiscal viability and all of that. But it is important to have the public feel that they have a voice in the input, just as we do with any other projects. And it's important that we get that statistical survey. And the reason we are choosing to hire an independent survey is that the Communications Committee of SMC originally started out to do it and realized that they did not have the expertise to be able to generate a survey that was going to elicit the information we needed, and that they could maintain a unbiased list of questions. And so this group will help we will help them formulate an unbiased way to ask questions to get the information that we need. And it's important to be able to get those statistics cleanly without any influence of either the committee, the council, or the Board of Education. We just need the facts, ma'am.
Just so you know, this survey company does target demographics. So it's not going to be just targeting parents of school kids. It's not going to just be targeting certain demographics. They're going to try to do a widespread of the town. Was also brought up to make sure that they target the businesses as well to get their input in this survey. So Dr. Solon said that he saw a survey that this company had done from Groton, and he was very impressed with how much detail they went into on it. So, I mean, hopefully, when we get to the point of getting these options, then the survey will kick in. Right now, it's a little too early because there would be way too many questions that would need to be asked in order to get a good analogy of what the town wants. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you both, because I was curious. Also, that was my follow-up question. So thank you for leading into that. And that is, what is the time frame here as far as when is the appropriate time to be asking these questions? I mean, obviously, you don't want to ask them after you've already gotten down to your choice, and if people say, "Oh, we don't like that choice," or "We have other thoughts," but obviously, as you said, you can't ask the questions too early before you've narrowed those choices down. It
may be after the SMC has made their choices. It
right.
may
Okay.
be. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
I think it's still pretty much an open still very much an open question, I think, as to when we would field the survey, I think, but I do think we'll need to narrow down the list of options we have right now, obviously. But I do think it's likely to be, late January, February timeframe, probably when the survey goes in the field. But, in addition to collecting information and getting feedback from the public, it'll also be a way to sort of be marketing what we're doing to the public as well. So it's kind of a two-way thing, and probably one of the best mechanisms for getting some good feedback from the public on the whole project.
Actually, I agree with you, Jim. Thank you very much. I think you're right. It's, even if you're just putting this out there, even if people aren't asking questions, at least they're seeing it. They're seeing what's happening and what the choices are. I think that's going to be important. I also just want to find out, I assume that, of course, the perception is that there's enough time between now and then to hire them, get the questions ready, get the survey all done. Timing's not going to be an issue.
They said it's 60 days from the time we hire them to the time they get this complete. So if we say in January we want it done, we should have it done by March. So I mean that's what they're saying.
That's the survey complete by March.
Right.
Prepared to put it out. That's
right.
The survey complete. If we give them the go ahead now, they can get working on the questions and then just hold the rollout of it to a time we feel is appropriate.
Okay, perfect. I was going to say, but it is a little time sensitive, though.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Any other questions or comments from members of the council on this? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We're going to now move on to item 10, Town Manager Report and Communications. Mr. Kimball.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just share my screen real quick for the Town Manager Report. 1 second. Okay. Thank you all. I will be pretty brief tonight. As always, front and center in the report is the COVID-19 pandemic. I won't go into great detail as we did have Ms. Esposito presenting earlier. But as you can see, in the month of November alone, we had 192 cases, which exceeds the amount of cases we had from all of June through October combined. We are seeing a surge, as everyone is well aware. Along with 159 other towns in the state, we've been designated a red alert level community with a case rate of 32.1 daily cases per 100,000 residents. You'll see the map that initially had a lot of gray, yellow, and orange on it, and now the entire state is pretty much above the 15 average cases per 100,000. We are, again, continuing to stress to our residents and employees it's imperative we rethink our daily activities and shrink our social circles, avoiding groups and gatherings. Private gatherings continue to be the primary source of spread. As always, please remember to wear your mask, wash your hands, keep your distance from non-family members. Our town operations are continuing unchanged at this time, despite sporadic COVID-19 positive cases and exposures requiring quarantine within the workforce. We have not experienced any spread within the workplace to date, and the positive cases we have experienced have all stemmed from family member cases or gatherings outside of work. With the winter season upon us, our Public Works Department has activated a strategy to mitigate the operational impact of COVID, including splitting up crews for breaks at multiple facilities, contingency plans for relief drivers, and Chesapeake approved plan to test out of quarantine available to first responders for reporting directly to our plow truck only if absolutely necessary. Just last night, we had the annual tree lighting, heavily modified due to COVID, understandably, but I did just want to recognize the Recreation Department and Public Works who helped coordinate the tree lighting ceremony, complete with a new additional lighted tree at Bartlam Park, which I hope folks will see and notice along Route 10. In addition, of course, to the one on the church green. We had a visit from Santa via the Cheshire fire truck. Town council members were in attendance. The Cheshire Junior Women's Club and essay contest winner, Eliana Orlinsky, who did the countdown, and the Cheshire Lions Club. We want to thank them for a beautifully refurbished Santa chair, which we can't wait to use in the future with more normal gatherings resume. The event was live streamed on YouTube and Facebook. It's available online on those platforms if anyone would like to enjoy it. Just an update on the Bartlam South Chapman property master plan. We held a very successful virtual public engagement session last Thursday, December 3rd. We had incredible public participation, a lot of comments and feedback on the concepts as presented by Weston and Sampson. And just a reminder, if residents have any additional thoughts or comments, please contact us by email, recreation@cheshirecT.org. And again, the next steps will include the consultants and staff incorporating the public's feedback as best as possible into a draft preferred master plan concept that should be presented to the town council in the coming months. Attached in your packet, town council members, you should find 4 Public Building Commission project completion reports for the library roof and HVAC project, district-wide lavatory improvements, the Doolittle bathrooms, and the parks bathroom improvements. So please take a minute to take a look through those. I know the council is aware, but just wanted to announce and publicize that Cheshire was successful in receiving the $1.5 million Small Cities Grant on behalf of the Cheshire Housing Authority and Beachport Apartments. This project will modernize fire alarm and emergency call for aid systems, allowing all of the buildings to be monitored individually and collectively, even in the event of a loss of power. The system is capable of providing exact location of a call, identifying the building unit and room, and the type of device that was activated. This information will then be available to the fire department and first responders in real time. Additionally, the kitchens in 43 units will be renovated to include the installation of new cabinets, countertops, vented exhaust fans, sinks, faucets, LED lights, new flooring throughout. The site work and safety measures include replacing sidewalks that have become hazardous to the residents and guests, and an additional 15 parking spaces that will be created to accommodate residents, staff, and visitors. Currently, there are only 40 parking spaces for 48 units and 52 residents. And so again, I know we're very pleased that we will be able to do this and upgrade those facilities there at Beachport. And with that, I will just have some upcoming council and subcommittee meetings, as well as school modernization meetings to highlight. And that's the end of my report. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kimball. Questions or comments from members of the council? Mr. Veliver.
Yes, thanks. I was able to attend the tree lighting at Bartland Park, and I just wanted to stress it's nice having that new tree and the beautiful the new Santa's chair. Thank you very much to the Lions Club for that. I mean, it's a really nice site. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to have a larger gathering due to the COVID restrictions, but it was a very nice event, very nice. The tree is beautiful. And I also want to stress, it's nice also to have the tree on the town green or the church green lit as well. That's nice having both trees lit up. He did a great job, not only in the Bartland Park, but on restringing and relighting the one on the church green as well. That was very nicely done. And so thank you. I just wanted to stress to everyone that we now have 2 beautiful trees here in town lit up, and so bringing joy to both ends of town. So,
and then just to add to that, you should see a very nice star topping the church green tree very soon. Unfortunately delayed due to COVID, but we have an added decoration coming soon. So you heard it here first.
Excellent. Even COVID affects the star on the tree. Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, I just wanted to just say it's great to see us getting the $1.5 million grant, Small Cities Grant. It's going to really. I spoke with some people from the Cheshire Housing Authority, and they're thrilled with this because it's really going to go help improve Beachport, bring it up to date, and actually increase the safety of the residents there. So I am so happy that grant came through because they weren't really sure if it was or not, especially in this year. So kudos to all those people who worked hard to get this grant done, and I look forward to seeing the improvements that are going to be done at Beachport.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. It's a significant grant, so I think we're all thrilled that we're able to do that and invest in Beachport for some needed improvements and add to the quality of life of the people that live there. So we agree with that. Any other questions or comments from members of the council?
If I could just briefly echo those kudos and extend them to our assistant town manager, Arnett Talbot, who participated in a very lengthy training that is now required as part of the Small Cities Grant Program. And so she knows what I'm talking about. It was hours and hours, but it was well worth it. And so it's just another one of those unseen things that goes on in the background as the town helps facilitate this program. So.
Behind every project is Arnett, right, Arnett? I know you're working really hard these days. So thank you. We know you're working around the clock and working late nights, and certainly it's not unrecognized by the council and the community. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And this grant is really great, good for the community. So I'm glad we can help make it happen.
It's really great. And the last thing I would mention is I also attended the tree lighting, and one of the things that I was really encouraged, another John Gawlak positive, that, you know, he's talking about in the future to do much more lighting at Bartlett, to really make it kind of a destination location for people to go see much more lighting. So I think the community has a lot more to see at Bartlett based on John's leadership and the Park and Rec Commission and others. And I think I'm looking forward to, you know, in addition to the green, you know, having more places that we can celebrate like Bartlett. And, you know, John's doing a great job. And the Park and Rec Committee, again, I want to acknowledge them. Peter, I know you're part of that group and you're very fond of it because they work really hard. They're a very dedicated group of volunteers, like all our volunteers are. But, you know, they take giving back in the Park and Rec capacity very serious. They work hard. And they're generally behind a lot of this stuff as well. And they're kind of an unsung hero group. So kudos to them as well, because they are always supporting John Gawlak's work, him and his staff. So, you know, thanks to them as well. Any other questions or comments on this? If not, we'll move on to reports of the Committee of the Council. Chairman's report, Ms. Nichols?
Not for me.
Mr. Walsh?
No report.
Mr. Slocum?
No report.
Mr. Veliver?
As the town manager's report announced, there will be an ordinance review committee meeting next Thursday, the 17th, where we will be taking up and further discussing, as the you know, the potential unsafe premises and anti-blight ordinance, the Airbnb, whatever, short-term rental, and as well as possibly discussing the mobile vendors ordinance, possible discussion on that as well. So that's next Thursday.
Thanks, Mr. Veliver. You got a busy committee there, so we look forward to your work. I know
Good.
there's
Yeah, we got a lot of
thank you.
We got a lot of important
items
things
in ordinance right now, so I'm sure we're all looking to see what comes out of that committee. I'm sure the community is as well. Mr. Barry?
Nothing, sir.
And I think that's it for chairman's reports, correct? I didn't miss anybody. We'll move on to miscellaneous and appointments, liaison reports. I'll start just in the screens. Mr. Walsh?
No report.
Ms. Nichols?
No report.
Mr. Slocum?
No report.
Mr. Talbot?
We already heard from all the good things at Park and Rec Commission, so I'll skip that one. But from Energy, on behalf of the Energy Commission, thank my colleagues for the support of the community choice aggregation in tonight's legislative agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Veliver?
No report.
Mr. Jinks?
Yeah, thank you. Beautification Committee asked me to pass along that they're still down 2 members. So they just wanted to let you guys know.
Ms. Pavano?
I have nothing.
Mr. Barry?
No report, sir.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to appointments to boards and commissions. Ms. Nichols, anything?
Yes, I do. And I'd like to segue from your comments about the Park and Rec. This appointment is for Park and Rec. It is to replace a vacancy. And I'm pleased to be able to nominate Rob Santoro from Pound Ridge here in town. He's a new appointment. He's filling the vacancy of Robert Parr. It will be effective today to 8 and will continue for Robert Parr's term from January 31st, 2021 for 4 years to January 31st, 2025. 24 to 24. He's a Republican, and as I say, he's replacing Robert Parr, who has resigned from the committee. So we're anxious to have him. And before we vote on that, just a little commercial, as Jim just mentioned, many of our boards and commissions need to be populated with new members, and we usually do that in January. I have a list of maybe 15 or 16 reappointments that are coming up for the meeting in January, but we're always looking for new members. So if you have time, now that we're sequestered, we do meetings by Zoom a lot, so you don't have to leave your house, but we could sure use some help on a lot of those town committees. go to the town website and look up all the committees that we have and find one that you're really passionate about, and let either myself or Peter Talbot know, and we will pass those along to the nominating committees of the two parties. So if you have interest, please do that. But again, I have to nominate Rob to fill the vacancy on Park and Rec.
And I will second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. And Mr. Talbot, do you have anybody?
I do not, sir.
Okay, so we'll just be voting on Mr. Santoro. We thank him for his service. He's been volunteering in the past in other capacities, and I'm sure it'll be a great addition to Park and Rec. It's greatly needed because it's a busy committee. So with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
passed unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Nichols, and thank you, Mr. Santoro. We'll move on to Town Attorney Report and Communications. Attorney Smith?
No report, sir.
Thank you, Attorney Smith. We'll move on to council communications, letters to the council. Do any members of the council have any communications?
No.
Seeing none, I do have one letter from Miss Joanne Cheryl Landon at 45 Hidden Place, Cheshire, Connecticut. And she is one of the Cheshire Community Garden users, and she wrote a letter to me and expressing some concern over the Weston and Sampson report that's been put out there engaging with the community, that in her opinion, the community gardens were kind of left behind, and concerned that the flexibility that it was referenced, that there would be real flexibility with whether that stays or goes. And just wanted to put on the record in this letter that she's concerned by that there are people that do a lot in those community gardens. They invest a lot. It takes time to get them to where they are. They've invested in fencing, and wants to make sure that as we deliberate over the Weston and Sampson plan and we engage with the community, that we certainly don't disregard the needs and the importance of the community garden. And I assured her that we do recognize as a council the importance of it, and that, you know, if it did need to be relocated, and I'm not suggesting it does, but certainly the town would be working with those users as best we can to make sure we have an alternative, and we would recognize the investment that they've put in it. And we would certainly be very sympathetic to their needs and their wishes relative to maintaining a community garden. So I did have a personal conversation with her. I certainly asked her to stay involved in the process, and asked her to make sure that other community garden members also engage. And I think they have, Sean. I think you may have had some conversation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
So
a number of them attended the virtual meeting that we had the other night, and spoke in a similar vein. And we certainly took their comments to heart, and again, recognize their passion and commitment to the garden there. And they had a lot of very good points. So we appreciate it.
Correct. So unfortunately, I was unable to attend that meeting, but I did speak with Miss Landon, and she did reference others had concerns. So I wanted to make sure that I got on the record the general thoughts that she put together in this letter, and assured her that we would certainly be considerate to all of their wishes and needs, and encourage them to continue to stay involved. So that's all I have relative to letters to the council. And unless there's any other matters that any council member would like to bring up at this moment, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Murray. Second, Mr. Slocum.
Correct.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn passed unanimously. Good night to everybody.
Night.
Good night, everybody.
See you next
Aye.
Tuesday.
And stay safe and be well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you next week.
You too.
See you
Have a
on
good
Tuesday,
night.
everybody.